The courtroom was a cold box of polished wood and sharp angles, the air thick with whispers and the weight of judgment. "You're a danger to society," the white officer snapped, his voice sharp with conviction, pointing at the black Navy SEAL veteran in the courtroom. The judge didn't blink, the jury didn't stir, but the man in cuffs, Jared Holt, stood calm, his eyes like steel. "You'll see soon enough," he said, voice low, steady. Seconds later, a truth would unravel that flipped the entire room, turning their accusations to ash. What kind of man walks into a courtroom chained and leaves it commanding? Like, comment, and subscribe. Then let's see how it all began. It was 9 a.m. on a gray November morning in 2025, the Atlanta courthouse looming under a heavy sky. Jared Holt, 40, stepped through the doors, his gray suit plain but sharp, shoes polished but worn, no medals or military stripes. A Navy SEAL for 18 years, he carried no lawyers, just himself, a black man in a room of pale faces already scripting his guilt. The air held a chill, not from cold, but from expectation. The kind that says, "Sit down, don't speak, we know who you are." Jared scanned the room once, his gaze steady, trained by years in war zones where silence was survival. At the bench sat Judge Edwin Ross, silver-haired, eyes like flint, scribbling without looking up, as if Jared's presence was a formality he'd already dismissed. On the prosecution side, Officer Paul Carter sat, broad-chested, uniform crisp, a smirk curling his lips like he'd won before the trial began. The charge was stark, assaulting an officer in a precinct. No weapon, no bruises on Carter, no footage, just one man's word against Jared's. As Jared sat, the tension thickened. The bailiff watched too closely. The clerk typed too slowly. A woman in the front row gripped her purse like it might escape. Every move felt heavy, like the room itself disapproved of him. Jared's past was a map of sacrifice. 18 years in the Navy SEALs, missions in shadows, citations for valor. But here, he was no hero, just a defendant. Years ago, on a dusty base in Iraq, he'd saved a squad under fire, dragging a wounded private to safety. The private, white and shaken, had whispered, "Didn't expect you to be the one." Jared handed him water, said nothing. Later, in the barracks, a voice called him war dog, a smile masking the sting. Bravery, he learned, had limits. Some uniforms made you invisible, even when you bled. That memory burned now, steady in his chest as he faced the courtroom's glare. Early in his SEAL career, Jared's mentor, Lieutenant Marcus Tate, a black officer with scars deeper than his skin, pulled him aside after a training mission. "They'll call you a hero when it suits them," Tate said, his voice rough but steady. "But a threat when it doesn't. Let your actions answer, not your words." Tate had faced his own battles, demotions, slurs, sidelined reports, and taught Jared to carry dignity like armor. That lesson anchored Jared now. His silence in the courtroom not weakness, but a choice, forged in the fire of Tate's wisdom and the weight of a system that judged him before he spoke. The trial began with a snap. Judge Ross cleared his throat, his tone sharp. "This court is in session. State of Georgia versus Jared A. Holt, charged with assault and obstruction." His eyes flicked to Jared, cold, certain, like he'd already judged. "A decorated SEAL, I'm told," Ross said, almost mocking. "One expects better from those trained to serve, not strike." Jared didn't flinch. He knew this game. Carter's smirk, Ross's tone, the jury's averted eyes. His court-appointed attorney, Mia Chen, young and nervous, leaned in. "Stay calm, Mr. Holt. Don't speak unless asked." Jared nodded once, his gaze fixed ahead, like he'd done on missions when the line had to hold. Carter stood, his voice loud, practiced. The defendant entered the precinct agitated, confrontational. I asked him to empty his pockets. He refused, raised his voice, shoved me back. Heads nodded in the jury, not from belief but from habit, the story fitting their expectations. Jared turned slightly, not to Carter but to the space between them. "I never touched him," he said, voice low, unshaken. The room went quiet, not listening but resisting. Ross leaned forward. "We'll let the evidence speak, Mr. Holt." But there was none. Carter's body cam corrupted, the precinct footage unavailable. Testimony had a color here, and it wasn't Jared's. From the back, a whisper cut through. "That's the SEAL from the news." Another replied, "Doesn't matter. They said he snapped." Outside, the city was already stirring. On X, posts with Charter Holt in court gained traction. locals sharing stories of Carter's heavy-handed stops. A barber posted, "He profiled my cousin last year. Same cop, same lies." A protest swelled outside City Hall, signs reading, "No more silence." Jared didn't see the posts, but he felt the weight of a community watching, waiting, their phones capturing every move, ready to amplify his truth. Carter stood again, his words precise, venomous. He was aggressive, unstable. I gave 3 verbal commands. He ignored them, squared up like he wanted a fight. I feared for my safety. That line landed like a blade, not for truth, but for power. Fear here wasn't fact, it was color. Ross folded his hands, eyeing Mia. She rose, flustered. "Your Honor, the department hasn't provided the footage. It's critical to verify Officer Carter's account." Ross's voice sliced back. "This court doesn't chase ghosts, counselor." A chuckle rippled through the room, Carter's smirk widening, like the laugh was his. Jared sat still, hands on his knees, his silence a shield. Carter's doubts gnawed beneath his swagger. Years ago, a black suspect walked free after a missing report, his partner warning, "Pick your fights, Paul. The system protects its own." Carter learned to bend truth, knowing the room would back him. But now, Jared's calm unnerved him. In the precinct break room, his partner, Officer Lena Hayes, had hesitated before the report was filed. "You sure about this, Paul?" she'd asked, her eyes sharp. "No bruises? No fight? This feels off." Carter brushed her off, but her words lingered. A crack in his certainty he couldn't seal, even now, as he doubled down on his lie. The air grew heavier. Ross tapped his pen. "Let the record show the defendant offers no rebuttal." Of course not. The process was scripted. Jared wasn't a SEAL here, wasn't a father, just a symbol to dismantle. The room felt calm, but it wasn't. It was satisfied, crushing quietly. Then Carter stood again, his face tight. "Your Honor, based on his demeanor, I believe he's unstable. For safety, I request he be restrained." Jared hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, but Ross didn't glance at him. "Granted," he said, the word a gavel's echo. The bailiff hesitated, then moved, cuffs glinting. Jared stood slowly, not in protest, not in fear, just deliberate. He extended his wrists as if he'd known this moment was coming. The cuffs clicked, sharp in the silence, wrong in a courtroom before a verdict. A woman in the back, mid-40s, in a green coat, stood. "This is wrong," she said, voice trembling with rage. "Y'all see this and act like it's normal?" Ross slammed his palm. "Order." But the air had cracked. Jared looked at her, gave a small nod, then turned to Ross. "You're not restraining me," he said, calm, cutting. "You're comforting yourselves." The room froze. Carter blinked. Ross's jaw tightened. The woman, Clara Bishop, was escorted out, her words lingering like smoke. Jared sat, cuffed, spine straight, eyes forward. He'd seen worse. Missions where silence meant life, where prejudice wore no mask. In Afghanistan, a white officer had called him boy after a medal ceremony, smiling like it was a joke. Jared didn't react, just kept moving. He'd learned protest fed the fire. Silence was survival. His father, a Vietnam vet, had taught him that lesson years earlier, sitting on their porch. "They'll try to break you, son," he said, his voice heavy with memory. "Stand tall, not loud. Your truth is your shield." That strength held Jared now, his father's words a quiet fire in his chest. The courtroom held its breath. Ross scribbled, his hand careless, mind made up. Then Clara returned, calm, holding a small black drive. "Your Honor," she said, voice steady, "I have evidence this court hasn't seen. Precinct footage, deleted before the investigation." Ross's eyes narrowed. "You're out of order, ma'am." Clara didn't flinch. "I'm Clara Bishop, civilian clerk. I recovered this from an off-site backup, time-stamped, verified." Murmurs rippled, jurors shifted. Carter's smirk faded. Ross crossed his arms. "No chain of custody, no forensics. This is hearsay." Mia stood, voice clearer. "Under Rule 902, verified digital files are admissible. The department failed to provide footage. This is material." Ross hesitated, then snapped, "Load it." The clerk plugged in the drive, the screen flickering to life. The room stopped breathing. The grainy precinct hallway showed Jared seated, calm, hands on his knees. Carter entered, not with duty, but with intent, jabbing a finger, leaning close, then slamming his palms on the wall by Jared's head. A gasp broke the silence. Audio kicked in. "You think that SEAL badge makes you special? Carter hissed. "You people don't belong here." Jared's reply was even. "You don't own me, not here, not anywhere." Carter grabbed his shirt, shoved him back. Jared didn't strike, didn't move, just fell. The courtroom recoiled. An older man in the gallery muttered, "Jesus," his hands trembling. A young woman clutched her phone, tears in her eyes, whispering to her friend, "That's not right." Another juror, a middle-aged black woman, leaned forward, her face tight with recognition, as if she'd seen this story before. The video's weight wasn't just in what it showed, but in what it awakened. A shared memory of injustice, a spark that spread through the room like fire. Carter's face paled, his hands gripping the table, the lie he'd built now crumbling under the light of truth. Ross stood. "Turn it off." No one moved. "I said turn it off." His voice cracked, brittle. Mia whispered to the clerk, and the video played on, showing another officer pulling Carter back, his face uneasy. Carter's final line cut through. "You're just a threat we can put down." The screen went dark, the air scorched. Ross slammed his gavel, but it sounded like panic. Jared spoke, calm, cutting. "You don't want truth. You want surrender. I don't owe you that." The room felt the shift, not in noise but in gravity, like a tide turning against a crumbling shore. No one moved. Ross's fingers gripped his chair, his robe heavy, his authority fraying. Jared sat, cuffed, certain, a faint smile curling his lips. Not victory, but certainty, like he'd known the outcome from the start. Mia, once hesitant, now stood taller, her hands steady. She doubted herself that morning, a young lawyer out of her depth, fearing she'd fail Jared. But his calm, his trust, had steadied her. "We've got this," she'd told herself, finding her voice in his silence. Now, facing Ross, she felt a fire she hadn't known she carried, ready to fight for the truth Jared embodied. Clara Bishop's resolve wasn't born in the courtroom. A year ago, her brother, a precinct janitor, had seen Carter's aggression toward a black teenager and reported it, only to be fired. "They bury the truth," he told her, his voice breaking. Clara, a clerk with access to backups, vowed to dig it out. When she found the deleted footage, she knew the risk, her job, her safety. But her brother's words burned. Someone's gotta stand. She stood now, her eyes on Jared, not Ross, her drive a testament to those who'd been silenced before her. The courtroom reconvened, the air thinner, back straighter. Jared sat, hands cuffed but steady. Ross's robe seemed to weigh him down, his eyes darting to the empty seat where a man in a gray suit had sat all morning. Silent, now gone. The doors opened. A young woman in a Navy uniform entered, silent, carrying a sealed envelope. She handed it to Mia, then left without a word. Mia stood, voice clear. "Your Honor, this is from the Department of Defense, marked urgent." Ross hesitated, then motioned her forward. Mia opened it, her eyes scanning. Ross's face drained, his hand trembling as he dialed a phone. "Confirm this," he said, voice low. The answer was audible. "He's active, protected, direct authorization." Ross paused, 5 seconds too long. "This court dismisses all charges against Jared Holt, effective immediately," he said, voice hollow. He stood, robe flapping, and left, his steps a retreat. The gallery sat, stunned, silent. Mia touched Jared's shoulder, whispering. Jared nodded, stood, cuffs removed, and walked out, not celebrating, just leaving, on his terms. The room watched, not seeing a defendant, but a man who'd flipped their world without raising his voice. A veteran in the back, Jose Mendez, pressed a frayed Navy cap to his chest, his eyes wet, seeing in Jared the battles he'd fought and lost. The silence didn't last. A woman, 60s, with a faded VFW pin, stood, her eyes proud. Then an older black man, in a worn jacket, rose, his face etched with memory. A young boy, no older than 10, stood with his mother, whispering, "I want to be like him." His mother gripped his hand, nodding. One by one the room stood, black, white, young, old. No applause, just a reckoning. Jared turned to Ross's empty bench, his voice soft. "This was never my stage. It was your mirror." The words echoed, not loud, but heavy, like truth laid bare. Outside, the city roared. Posts exploded. Wack Holton Court trending with Clara's video. Comments like, "He broke their system without a word." A local pastor posted, "Jared Holt stood for us all." Protests swelled outside City Hall, signs reading "Truth over Lies." A news anchor called it a verdict of character. A teen, Malik, sent a letter. "You stood like my dad did, quiet but strong." Jared replied, "Be better, Malik, but never forget how I stood." Months later, the courthouse bore new marks, training programs, Carter suspended, Ross retired. A plaque read, "Honor begins with truth." Jared's silence became a sound the city couldn't ignore. His legacy grew beyond the courtroom. Community centers hosted talks on reform, inspired by Jared's stand. A local school named a scholarship after him, urging kids like Malik to aim higher. On X, a teacher posted, "My students see Jared Holt as proof you don't need to shout to be heard." The city wasn't healed, but it was shifting, cracks widening, truth leaking through. Jared's story wasn't just a trial. It was a mirror, forcing all to look. Dignity doesn't shout, it rises. Share your thoughts below, like if this moved you, and subscribe for more stories of courage that shift the world. See you in the next one.